Welcome to Behind Every Employer, where leaders in business and education from across the country share solutions for sourcing, training, and growing frontline talent to create the workforce of tomorrow. This broadcast is brought to you by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. To learn more, check us out at www.coabe.org or any of your favorite podcast sites. Now, here are your hosts, Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz.
Hello, Anson. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jeff. Always great to see you, and so looking forward to this episode. We have a dynamic duo today, and this is going to be a really great one for the employer community out there. We're going to hear from a giant in the Midwest and the world, and then a really strong showing here, and we've had this before on the podcast, for a nonprofit literacy provider. You might remember our friends up in Michigan that we had a few episodes ago with the West Michigan Literacy Council. What a great show that was. This one is going to give it a run for its money, or best it maybe. I don't know. It's going to be a great episode. We'll get there in a little bit. I want to mention a few things to our listeners. Thank you. I would love you to like the episode on your favorite podcast app. Definitely add it to your favorites there. And if you want to find out more about Behind Every Employer, you can go to behindeveryemployer.org and subscribe there, or you can subscribe on your favorite app. Jeff, I wanted to mention something that just came out, and it's very appropriate for this conversation and for this podcast. I have a new publication that just came out called Beyond the First Meeting, a beginning guide for cultivating a thriving workplace education program.
I love it.
Beyond the first meeting. A lot of times we can get the first meeting, but it's getting the second meeting that's the important thing with employers. I put this together with some great resources and just a lot of my experience over the years, but I really wanted something that was a good, handy guide that we could really help our providers turn into places like Lincoln Literacy. You can find this publication. It's free. It's on the Behind Every Employer website. So behindeveryemployer.org. Download that thing. And I think it's got a lot of great little tips in there. And if you've got new tips, you can always send them over to me because we can update that thing very easily. But I wanted to bring that up because it's been very popular. And I think it's just going to really help us. A lot of times, when we talk to our education community, they are really desiring to work with employers, but they don't know the first steps. They don't know what not to blunder into and how to find the right conversation starters and how to build things for the next meeting. So kind of want to put those things together. Yeah.
So just a few things from my end. One is we're getting a lot of requests. So the last show was with Chef Jeff Henderson.
Yeah.
It was a great show. We're getting a lot of calls from people across the country that want to be on the podcast. So if you want to be on the podcast, go onto the coabe.org website, send us a note on there, and we'd love to talk to you and see what you bring to the table and get you on the show. So go out there, listen to the show. If you have any suggestions on people that would be great guests, or if you want to be on yourselves, let us know. But for sure, share this out with your friends. Make sure people are listening and get out there, because we are, we're hot. Things are going really well. I'm really excited about the way the podcasts are going, and
awesome.
I'm anxious to get to our guests. Actually,
yeah, I'm thrilled here. Let's bring them on.
You got it.
All right. Hey, we got Kevin here and Bryan Seck. Let me introduce these folks. This is, like I said, a dynamic duo up there in the Midwest. Lincoln, Nebraska is where they hail from. Kevin is coming to us from Kawasaki Motors USA. Yes, this is a major employer in Lincoln, and we're going to hear all about that. He's the training administrator there. But like a lot of our guests and ourselves, he's had a real diverse career. High school teacher, nationally touring stand-up comedian. We'll see if that comes into play tonight. And was an adjunct professor at Dunn University. So I love that background. 20 years, I think, at Kawasaki now. He leads just a wide variety of training, of course, at a major manufacturer like that. And we want to hear about that. We want to hear a little bit about Kawatech, which is their upskilling advancement program over there at Kawasaki. And he's just been instrumental when I first got introduced to Lincoln, Nebraska as anything but a name. It was because of Kawasaki and because of the relationship with Lincoln Literacy and their English language learning programs over there. And that's where Bryan Seck comes in. And actually, Bryan was working at Kawasaki, and I think that's where I got the introduction from. He has now taken his career path over to become the executive director at Lincoln Literacy, which is just going to be to our listeners a real great lesson in just best practices for nonprofit development and expansion. Bryan's got a really great background too. Peace Corps in Kazakhstan, taught English in Washington, D.C. and New York, led a homeless student outreach program in Lincoln Public Schools, talent management at Kawasaki, and now executive director over there at Lincoln Literacy. So we've got some real diverse career paths themselves for our guests. And I just want to welcome them here and begin with some questions. And Bryan, I'm going to start with you and then we'll come over to Kevin. But I'd love to have you guys just talk to our listeners, give a little brief introduction about yourself and what you do over there at Lincoln Literacy. Bryan.
Sure. So Lincoln Literacy started in 1973 as an organization that was really focused on increasing the literacy of homegrown Americans, people who may didn't finish high school or really struggled with reading and writing. However, when the Vietnam War ended in 1975, Lincoln received its first large population of refugees and became what's called a federally designated resettlement community, which means we're good at it. So now those newest neighbors from Vietnam are now in their fourth generation, which is really amazing that the children are. And so what we have is now Lincoln is a town of 300,000 people, but 10% are foreign born. And we have people from 50 different countries at Lincoln Literacy. We serve 1,300 students in all levels of English acquisition, from the very, very, very basics, teaching the alphabet, to very advanced pronunciation, idioms, all kinds of stuff. We also offer classes on citizenship, driving, and workplace. And what I'll say about that just briefly is that what we realized as an organization was it's critical to get people English, but the key to ending poverty is a job, and a job that can grow, and the job that people can be successful in. And so we've partnered with different businesses, Kawasaki being one of them, to increase the knowledge of their workers so that they can be promoted and grow into the next job. And then Lincoln Literacy can help backfill those positions as folks are promoted. So it's a really exciting time at Lincoln Literacy. Yeah. We're thrilled to be here.
I love that, man. We're going to hear more about Lincoln Literacy. And the story reminds me of one from another town that had this really big transformation due to refugees from Vietnam. Storm Lake, Iowa has a similar story, very small town in the Midwest that just went through a massive transformation and really was something that the city government, and I know your city leaders there, your mayor, are just complete leaders and servant leaders there in Lincoln. Same was in the Storm Lake with the mayor. The town was losing population. He wanted to really build it so they could grow economic growth and was a real welcoming city to the Vietnam refugees. So I love those stories. They go way back now. And that brings us over to another story that goes back in Kawasaki. So I want Kevin to come on here and tell us about Kawasaki and a little bit about you, but really about Kawasaki too, and your roots there in Lincoln, please.
Well, our plant has been here since 1974. Kawasaki was the first foreign vehicle manufacturer to set up operations in the United States. So we've been here longer than Toyota, Honda, anybody. We are obviously coming up on our 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
We are the largest manufacturing facility in the state of Nebraska. We have about 2.5 million square feet under a roof. And we have plenty of room for expansion. Currently, our consumer products division is building side-by-side vehicles, utility vehicles, ATVs. We have a rail car division. We build commuter rail cars for metro transit systems. Currently, we are working on the R211, which is the new New York City subway train. We recently finished a project for Washington, D.C., the state of Connecticut, Long Island Railroad. We also have an aerospace division here, and we build the large cargo doors for the Boeing 777 and 777X.
Wow. Wow. I heard everything except motorcycles. When I I love this story. Yes, this is just blowing my mind.
It's interesting. The part of the reason we came to the United States was because of motorcycles. In the early 70s, Japanese motorcycles started to outsell American ones, and Harley Davidson didn't like that.
Yeah.
So they retained the services of a very talented lobbyist who helped get a tariff passed on imported motorcycles with engines 750 cc's and higher. So Kawasaki just thought, well, let's build them in the United States and we don't have to pay the tariff.
Yeah.
The exception of the first motorcycle model that was built here, all of the bikes that were built here were 750 on up. So, and some famous motorcycles have been built here too.
Wow.
The original Top Gun movie, the Ninja that he rides, built here. If you remember the television show Chips,
sure,
the motorcycles that they rode were Kawasaki's, and they were all built here.
Oh my gosh, I love this story. This is fantastic, and it's a great Jeopardy question too, because no one would guess that you guys were the first Japanese vehicle manufacturer in the U.S. I mean, that was something I just recently learned, and I just love that story. And in Lincoln, Nebraska. So I want to turn and talk and just ask both of you guys to chime in. You're longtime residents. Something is happening there in the Midwest in Nebraska with Lincoln going back to the 70s. I mean, you come in 74 with Kawasaki. And then the refugees a year earlier or later, I can't recall. But tell us a little bit about the culture, the leadership of Lincoln. What is the recipe that is creating this climate that now has a 10% population of foreign-born residents, which is just astounding? Anybody? Bryan?
So Lincoln has a really amazing dynamic of nonprofits working together and, believe it or not, great communication between city and state government. So, for example, we have what's called the New Americans Task Force here, which is organized by the mayor's office. It's been around since the 90s. And all of the agencies that serve New Americans, our newest neighbors, get together once a month to make sure that we're not duplicating services, to share best practices, build relationships, share contacts. And that's really amazing. We're on a path now with our mayor to be what's called a welcoming community, which is a designation that will allow us to be more competitive in a lot of grants, and really is a testament to our communities working together. And that goes back across Democrat and Republican mayors, goes across multiple governorships. And I think really the strength of what Lincoln is doing is that we're small enough that we can all work together, but we're big enough as a town of 300,000 to have employers like Kawasaki who are willing to work with us. So I really think it comes back to collaboration.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Kevin, how about you? Tell us a little bit, either as a longtime resident or a longtime employer partner there, and tell us your perspective on Lincoln. What makes it work for Kawasaki, for you?
I think a lot of what is happening here is a result of the colleges and universities in the area.
Oh, okay.
There's, it's a very academic and learning focused community. We have, at least, through Kawasaki, we have started to influence some of the institutions around here, the community colleges, to look at more, stackable credits rather than, you got to get an associate's degree. We have a lot of people who they just want the skills to go and have a good career.
Sure.
And we're turning the focus to that. We've also done a fairly good job of turning around that stigma of manufacturing being something that you settle for.
Right.
We have a lot of people here that have built stellar careers. In fact, our number 2 executive here doesn't have a college degree. He is a graduate of the University of Kawasaki.
Yeah.
And he's the number 2 guy. And, I would put his knowledge of manufacturing and lean manufacturing against anybody on the planet. So I think we have it's a good community. There's a strong work ethic here. And we have a lot of the advantages of larger cities, but, not all of the problems of larger cities.
So Anson, I'm so curious. The one thing that we're seeing here is a relationship between an employer and educational organization, and I think Lincoln Literacy is jumping in with the employer to kind of create this great relationship. More and more employers across the country need to follow this model and understand that for them to be really successful with Kevin and Kawasaki, they need to know how to read and write. And I'm just curious if you guys could talk a little bit. I know, Bryan, you were part of Kawasaki before, but what's that relationship look like? And what kind of advice would you give to other literacy agencies out there that are looking for the Kawasaki's across the country that they can engage?
Definitely. So Lincoln Literacy's history working with businesses goes back a long ways. We've taught at our Marriott hotel for many years and continue to do that to help their hospitality staff be able to communicate with guests with the same idea of promoting them up to other positions. And then our relationship with Kawasaki has really grown. And what we do is if we are aware of an employer that employs a significant number of our new Americans, probably because we hear about it from them in class, from our students, is we'll approach them and say, hey, is this something that you're interested in? And what we do, just briefly, is that we work with the employer to get an understanding of the vocabulary, safety processes, measurement tools, whatever it is that people are doing every day, and perhaps aren't able to communicate how they do it. These are all people who are already working. And so we're building those skills, but also what we've really built in is helping people understand what benefits are. If you are in Afghanistan, if you're an Afghan refugee, you don't know what an insurance premium is. That's not something that's something you're going to be familiar with. So we not only provide employment skills, we also talk to people about their benefits. And that's a retention device for businesses. Because people who are enrolled in benefits, they don't change jobs nearly as often. We talk about 401ks. We talk about all these different things. So by the end of the class, people have an increased understanding of being able to communicate at work and feel confident in that communication, but also are better aware of the benefits and career pathways, because we actually have HR people come in to our Lincoln Literacy classes and talk about career pathways. And a lot of times people have never heard about it before.
Yeah. Man, this is what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, man. Just so comprehensive. And I love this kind of holistic, if that's the best word, aspect. You mentioned things like benefits. And when you look at the benefits rates of usage rates of long-time employees, sometimes they're sometimes very low, and oftentimes you can correlate that to literacy and language.
Yes.
They just don't know how to sign up. They don't know how to use it. They don't know what it is because they're from a country that doesn't have such things. I just love that aspect of things, and that you guys tackle all of it hand in glove with the employer, bringing the employer in, because that sends it sends a message to everybody, the employer community, that you're just an adjunct arm to their workforce strategies, to your peer nonprofit community saying, hey, we can do this too. And of course, to your students that say like, hey, this place is all about jobs. This place can help me get that advancement or that career growth that I'm looking for, or use my insurance. I mean, I just love this aspect of things. So great work there. I want to turn over back to Kevin and talk about this workforce at Kawasaki. So we've heard on the podcast so far, 10% of the city is diverse from foreign-born, not just diverse, but foreign-born individuals. And then we see the work happening over there at Lincoln Literacy. Talk to us about the diversity within Kawasaki, and then I want to drill into that.
We are probably the most diverse company in the area.
Yeah.
I don't know what the current count of different languages spoken here is right now, but it's interesting because we've had students from Burma in the ELL classes.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily speak the same language.
Oh yeah.
Over 100 Burmese languages.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. In the class, English becomes the common language between everyone. We have a lot of Ukrainian people here, a lot of Afghans. We have people from Iraq. We have a lot of people from the African countries. And it's just an amazing place.
I love that story. And, I know plenty about manufacturing, and I know that these are also good jobs for these individuals. So we're talking about individuals that may have no English literacy, sometimes no native language literacy, never been to school, from some of those countries that you mentioned that have been in war for their whole lives, maybe been through refugee camps, just had very unsteady, if any, education. They end up in Lincoln, and they've got a great job, good pay, I'm sure, and of course, benefits and all those kind of things. So the question I think some of our listeners might have, and I might want to hear some more about this myself, it's Kawasaki. This has got to be a very advanced manufacturing facility. So how does the match between the diversity, the language, the skills, and the technical automation, various forms of advancement in the factory work? Like, talk to me about that dynamic.
Well, we have a program here called Kawatech, and Kawatech begins with 5 core courses: math, print reading, metrology, computer applications, and business communication. And once somebody completes those 5 core courses, that makes them eligible to apply for a number of different advancement tracks. They can go into quality control. They can be programmer operators, where they learn how to program and troubleshoot robots and laser machines and things like that. A lot of our new leaders, supervisors, team leaders are a result of the Kawatech program. We also have a tremendous demand for maintenance technicians. Yeah. Because we're constantly investing in technology. It needs to be serviced and maintained. Currently, we have 8 people at our local community college. 6 of those people are studying electromechanical technology. We have 1 in HVAC, and then 1 working on CDL driving. Yeah. And we are paying tuition, salary, books, and fees while they're there. We do ask them for a 3-year commitment when they've graduated and come back.
Right.
But we've had 10 or 12 people who we've sent to school, and they are now maintenance technicians for us.
Which is a highly compensated position. That's a highly paid role and hard
Absolutely.
to find. So
hard to find, and you've got automation, so you need automation techs, which is even more advanced. Yes.
Well, and we kind of built that into the program, especially for the maintenance technicians, where with the degree, they can make a certain level, but we also give them opportunities to advance their knowledge and skill. So they're really in charge of their own pay rate, and most of them have really bought into this, and just all have gone up to the top level of pay scale, and it's valuable to us because they have such a diverse base of knowledge and skill. We can be confident that whatever technology we bring in, they're going to be able to handle it.
Oh, I love this. I want to ask you one more question, and then, first time I'm hearing just multifaceted approaches. You're engaging the colleges, you're engaging the Literacy Council, you're engaging or building internal Kawatech model. So there's all these options that address kind of the continuum of skills that you find in the plant. I tell you, Jeff, this is exactly what I was telling you at the top of the show. A real amazing and enlightened business partner, and then an equally enlightened Literacy Council. Kevin, one more question. So, given that diversity of language on the floor, and given the fact that you're talking about manufacturing, which is inherently a very safety focused sector, do you use like interpreters? How do you manage the communication that is just absolutely essential on the floor there at Kawasaki?
It's been kind of a long, strange trip.
Yeah.
I started here in 2010, and we had a pretty diverse workforce at that time, and I said, let's do something. Let's start an English language learner program. Right. And the argument was always, well, all of the safety material is in English. Safety data sheets, all that are in English. So, people just have to have a, basic understanding of English to work here.
Right.
Well, a while back, we have sister plants in Maryville and Boonville, Missouri, and we build small gasoline engines. We supply the the commercial mowing industry. And the demand for our engines had gone up, and we hadn't opened Boonville yet. And so we brought an engine line here, and we were having trouble staffing it. And our staffing service said, if you would let us bring in people who speak Spanish, we'd have that staffed for you tomorrow.
Wow. So,
the management made the decision, okay, we're going to bring these people in. We're going to get some bilingual team leaders, and we're going to keep them right there, in engines.
Love it. Yeah.
Well, these people have skills, they have talent, and we wanted to have their skill and experience in other areas. And then, the problems in Ukraine started happening, and Afghanistan, and we started bringing these people in. And, the demand for people is there. And we said, okay, we've got to make a commitment. And Bryan and I worked together to get the ELL program started. But now we have been translating all of our crucial information into several different languages. We have a gentleman in our office from Afghanistan, and he does all the Pashto and Dari translation. We have people here that help us with Spanish translation. One of our general foremen is from Ukraine, and he helped us translate everything into Ukrainian. So it's still a work in progress. All of our training, it's sometimes difficult for us to find safety data sheets and that kind of information in different languages.
Yeah.
So there's a balance there. Teaching people English, but also providing resources in their language, so they can understand and, work safely and go home in the same condition that they came to work.
Oh, I just love this story. And, the employers all across the country should really be thinking about these models, because that is the future workforce in so many communities. You can't staff fully if you're not looking at other populations. Maybe they don't speak English. I saw this. I'm in San Antonio here. Of course, this has been happening in Texas for decades, where I saw businesses start to say, we're going to keep doing ESL, but we have got to start switching over and doing our lean training in Spanish and things like that 25 years ago. So it is definitely something where that expertise that you're getting from Lincoln Literacy comes in real handy, and building your own kind of capacity is just essential there. Jeff, chime in here. Tell me what you're hearing here.
Yeah, I'm hearing so much. So first of all, I want to go to Kevin and then Brian real quick. But Kevin, employers are listening to this and saying, what, this is way too much work, and what's my return on investment for this? Why am I should I really invest on this? And yet we know in the country right now, there are more jobs out there than there are people to fill them. Yeah. And there's such a demand in our labor market. And the bottom line is there's so much talent out there for people that don't necessarily speak the English language. How hard was it for Kawasaki to make this pivot? And you obviously have been doing it well. You've been doing it for a while, and you got the right partners there. Was there a pain point there, or did it just flow naturally when you figured it all out?
Like I said before, it was kind of a struggle until that opportunity presented itself. But it really has not been difficult at all. Our partnership with Lincoln Literacy has been tremendous. We work together on the curricula, and I'm there for almost every class,
which is huge.
We offer the classes on Saturday. Our people are paid to go to class. But after every class, the instructors from Lincoln Literacy and I sit down and say, okay, how do we make this better? Yeah. What are people needing? We look at the individuals and we say, this person is really advancing at a rapid rate. We need to give them more. Yeah. And it's just been a great relationship. Some of the return on investment, my manager is starting to crunch some of the numbers, and we're seeing a higher retention rate in the people that are a product of our ELL program than our overall retention rate. Yeah. Personally, it's fun for me to see the intercultural relationships start to form. We have people that are friends who have come from completely different parts of the world. In one of our first classes, we had a Ukrainian woman who was in the class, and she had been in the United States for a while. But while she was in that class, was when Russia invaded Ukraine, and she had family. Still has family in Ukraine, and was very concerned because she could not contact them. Right. And the people in that class rallied around her during that time, and there's some very solid friendships. They would walk out hand in hand, and you see a Latina woman and a woman from Sudan, and it's really kind of cool for me to see this. A lot of times, for the last day of the of the course, we have a little graduation ceremony and a party, and people bring in food from their family recipes and things. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing. There's a Burmese woman who makes egg rolls, mm-hmm. and she'll show up at my office here every once in a while and say, has this package of egg rolls.
Okay, we're recording around dinner time here, so we've got to calm this conversation down. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to come over to the last question here for Bryan. But I mean, I just love this aspect. And when you think about your retention, well, you're building these kind of support networks, intercultural support networks. And then these populations that have sometimes fled war, fled refugee, been in refugee camps, come to the middle of America, to Nebraska, and probably think, I'm going to be alone here. I need support. Right. And they're building this over there with Bryan and over there with Kawasaki. So Bryan, for the last question before the lightning round here, tell our listeners out there, especially our adult education and literacy communities, what are the benefits? I mean, they're very obvious to me here, but I would like to hear from you the benefits of engaging businesses for Lincoln Literacy.
Sure. I mean, I'm a big believer in private-public partnerships. And when I think about the future of Lincoln Literacy, we have about a $1.4 million budget. We have 150 amazing volunteer tutors. We're a volunteer-led organization.
Yeah.
So we serve over 1,300 students with about 35 staff members, many of whom are part-time. Yeah. And so when I think about the financial future of Lincoln Literacy, what we've really built is another leg for our stool of funding. So one call to action, I would say, for anyone listening to this is to access your American Job Center. The American Job Center is funded by the Workforce Investment and Opportunities Act, also known as WIOA, and we're able to partner with Kawasaki with grant funding. So the grant covers Kawasaki's pay to their workers, and then Kawasaki in turn pays Lincoln Literacy. We now teach at 9 different businesses. It'll be 11 by this winter, and that's from 2 about a year and a half ago.
Wow,
that's awesome!
It's a super sustainable source of funding for us. Just thinking about budgets, I'm not even thinking about the benefits of doing it. It's a steady source of income for us because the diversity isn't going away, and we're receiving more refugees every day. So it's a really great opportunity, I think, for any nonprofit to partner with a business, knowing that folks need to learn English, and there's probably more folks coming.
Oh man, I love this, and I one thing for clarification for our business partners, tell us about the 3-legged stool that you've made a 4-legged stool. What does that mean? Yeah. Because it's good for our business partners to kind of know how are these organizations funded, like what makes them tick.
Yeah. So Lincoln Literacy is really a well-run place, and I've only been here a year. So the previous director did a wonderful job. So basically, we have about a third of our funding comes from our state government to teach English to refugees. So that's part of the funding that's federal pass-through through the state. We have a great relationship with Department of Health and Human Services. A second, about 30% is individual contributions, just from generous members of our community, and then about 25% is through foundations. And this coming year in 2024, workplace partnerships it'll actually bump some of those other numbers down. It'll be close to 16% of our budget, which is amazing. It's sustainable. It can grow. Our staff members teach these classes as opposed to volunteers because it's a heavier load. They love teaching them. Like they're building relationships. They get to hang out with Kevin and build the class to be better. And so we've also seen, and I should say that some businesses pay us just straight through like a vendor. Others can go through the workforce grant. So that's an option. Some people don't want to do that. And also, Kevin, one thing that maybe you could speak about in a moment is the promotions that we've seen. So people who have gone through our class and been promoted. Another cool thing that I would highlight just briefly that we introduced at Kawasaki as kind of a continuous improvement is we realized that many of the students were coming in with 0 English. Many of the students were coming in with some intermediate level English, and there wasn't a perfect match of level. So what we did is we bifurcated. We made 2 classes. So now we have what we call the foundations class, and then we have a next level class. And I think what that did, and Kevin can speak to this, is it really increased the learning, because if you mix higher level speakers, they're going to dominate. The lower level people are going to be intimidated They're not going to talk. But you put a bunch of beginners together and you can watch the magic happen. English is their shared language. It's a Burmese person sitting next to an Iraqi person, sitting next to a Sudanese person, sitting next to a person from the Ukraine. They don't have anything in common.
Yeah, that's right.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it's really, really cool to watch the language happen because it happens fast when they're beginning.
Sure. Absolutely.
Bryan, before we go to lightning too, I just curious too, because you guys have talked a lot about the job, and Anson and I think about the career, and you both were really intentional about stating that it wasn't just about that entry level job, but it was about giving people a pathway that builds up. And that's just remarkable. That's something that should be modeled at every employer and every program across the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this, delivered more than I could have promised here in terms of like blockbuster content, best practices, strong partnerships, and I just see return on investments coming from all over the place for both organizations here. So I'm sure our listeners are going to be listening to this one and taking lots of notes. We're going to take a quick break here and come back for our lightning round, where we're going to charge Bryan and Kevin to charge our audience with one thing they can go do after listening to this podcast. Jeff, take it away.
Behind Every Employer. We'll be right back. You've been listening to Behind Every Employer with Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz. It's one thing to talk the talk, but in the lightning round, which is coming up, we walk the walk with action steps. You can listen to Behind Every Employer podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or find us on your favorite podcast venue.
All right. Here, I'm going to go to Bryan first on the lightning round. Charge our listeners with one thing they can do based on this discussion.
Absolutely. So the first thing that I would say, as we talked a little bit about this earlier, is look into your local American Job Center. Every community in America is covered by an American Job Center, whether it's in their town or if you're in a rural community in a town nearby. There is funding available through what's called the Incumbent Worker Program, which is what Lincoln Literacy and Kawasaki utilize for our partnership. And traditionally, those monies are underspent. I am on the Workforce Development Board, and for many years, we struggled to spend those dollars. And now with the growing partnerships with Lincoln Literacy, for the first time ever, we actually spent it all. And so that money is there. It's federally designated. It's not at the whim of budget cuts very easily. So it's a very sustainable source of income, funding for programs.
I love that call. Yes. I would say too, from the workforce development side, I know that program well. It's often not used for the types of services you're doing, for populations. And so state leaders and local leaders need to be listening in, because they sometimes think for eligibility reasons or for outcome reasons that lower skilled or non-English speakers are not a good population, or not one that their rules allow. I love that. You were going to say one more thing, Bryan, before I jumped in there.
One other thing that Kawasaki and our Lincoln Chamber of Commerce helped create, our Partnership for Economic Development, is an entry-level class for manufacturing. And what it is, it's a 6-week class. Once a week for 6 weeks, we provide a meal, childcare, a $250 stipend to take the class because we value your time. And people take that class and they learn all about the basics of measurement. They learn about the basics of safety, and then 2 employers visit each of the 6 classes. At the end, there's a career fair. We've had dozens of people placed into manufacturing jobs that are in demand in our community through this effort. It's called the Lincoln Manufacturing Council. It's been very successful, and I would put that out as a call to action, that we put that together. I'm sure that's something that we could share. And we have had a lot of success with it to get people into these jobs. We have 14,000 open jobs in our community. We have less than 2,000 people in unemployment. We have to maximize the talent. Yeah. We have to maximize the talent of our population if we want to keep growing, which we do.
Boy, Bryan, you're going to recruit me as a volunteer up there pretty soon here. So, Kevin, I want to come over to you and let us tell our listeners what your call to action is.
I think just give people present them with pathways where they can improve themselves and improve their position. You're really going to find that once you give these people a voice, they will do amazing things. And Bryan was talking earlier about the success of the ELL program. We have now 10 people that are team leaders that are a product of the ELL program. We have 3 people who are quality control inspectors that are a product of ELL. One of those is he had an opportunity. We were looking at to send him to the community college to become a maintenance technician. Mm-hmm. However, he doesn't have a GED. So that's our next focus. Coming up with some way to provide GED preparation classes for people here. So that isn't a barrier in way of their advancement.
Oh, fantastic. I'm sure Bryan's listening in on that one. Jeff, let's go to you, and then I'll close the show out.
So mine's a really easy one, and that's that, these kind of marriages are what's going to make our country really strong when it comes to workforce development and using the talent that's already here. We have people all across the country that are coming in from other places around the world that have talent, and we keep complaining about the demand in the labor force, but the people are there. We just have to be really intentional about giving them the resources to get into some of these employment opportunities. And Kawasaki and Lincoln Literacy are obviously doing it right. And I'd encourage everyone out there, if you want any more information, you need to reach out to Lincoln Literacy. And I'm sure Kevin also will make himself available to kind of share about the model that's happening. But if you're a big company out there or a small company and you're looking for talent, there is a pool out there. You just need to go get them.
Oh, fantastic. I totally agree. Here's my call to action. It goes back to something that we talked about earlier, and it has to do with interpreters and translators. Businesses are putting a constraint on their growth. They're putting a constraint on their staffing by not finding ways to accommodate languages and still maintain a safe and welcoming environment. And I know companies, Kawasaki, Tyson Foods has a center of excellence for their top 10 languages. Other companies are doing this, and it is something to definitely legitimize and to build structure around, so you can really start to open up your doors to other languages, but do so in a way that people feel like it's going to be safe environment. That risk is always one of the biggest worries with other languages. So I just love those models, and I love to hear what Kawasaki's doing. And that's my call to action. It's just been a great show. I want to thank our guest for coming on. We'll probably bring you guys back sometime, or maybe Bryan will bring you back with another employer, because it sounds like you got a plate full of them there for the next year. I want to leave everybody and remind everybody that there's this free publication I just put together called Beyond the First Meeting, a guide for beginning and cultivating a thriving workplace education program, just like the one we heard tonight. You can find it at behindeveryemployer.org. And I just want to thank our guests again. Jeff, take us out.
You got it. Take care, everybody. You've been listening to Behind Every Employer with Anson Green and Jeffrey Abramowitz. If you like the show, please follow us and tell your friends and colleagues. This broadcast has been brought to you by the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. You can find us at www.coabe.org. You can listen to us on Spotify, YouTube, or on your favorite podcast site. If you'd like to be a guest on Behind Every Employer, please contact us at behindeveryemployer@coabe.org.